Hey now, it's Thursday, and every Thursday at Inside Texas, we do the deep dive. I'm your host, Justin Wells, but more importantly, it's the two guys that know the X's and O's inside and out of this program from a micro and a macro level, Paul Wadlington, Ian Boyd. Thank you so much for joining us today on our deep dive. We're doing it live today, fellas. We're streaming this thing for lunch, like an early lunch when you wanted to take off from work because you're already in holiday mode on a Thursday when Friday you're not going to get much to do. Like our video, subscribe to the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel. We got past the 7,000. Let's continue to grow this thing. We're having so much fun with this. And also come see us at InsideTexas.com. We're running a promo right now. You can get 2 months for only $1. 2 months for $1 with the promo code IT1. And that allows you to read the premium stuff from Paul and from Ian when they really dive deep into whatever it is that fans want to know about and they want to hear about. And so today we're talking defensive tackles because that seems to be the buzzword, especially not just in recruiting, but in the portal. And we've talked about it a lot already. I know Paul and I had about how the supply is not going to meet the demand in this spring portal window and how everybody's cramming, not just to retain what they have, but also to add to the box, to try to get some depth and size on the interior. And so Ian Boyd's going to do some of that X's and O's stuff that we love so much. Paul's going to bring what Paul brings, which is everything. And I'm going to sit back and enjoy the show. Ian, what is PK in the D tackles? What are we doing in 2024? Lay it out for us.
Well, I kind of want to note today that for as much talk of PK being sort of inflexible or struggling to adapt, he actually has a lot of different tools in his toolbox for how to deploy fronts. On the back end, obviously, he seems to have things that he likes and at times seems to be kind of beholden to what the other coaches bring to the table. But up front, Texas has actually done quite a few different things. Joe, if we can get that really basic outline of gaps and yes. All right. So we're just going to do a quick primer for everybody. You got on the top, the numbers refer to the techniques, and then the letters on the bottom refer to the gaps. So whenever you're talking about the spaces between the guards and the center, those are the A gaps. Between the guards and the tackles are the B gaps. And then outside of the tight ends are the C gaps. If you have a tight end, then you have a D gap as well. The techniques and the numbers tell you where guys line up. So when a guy's in a 5 technique, he's on the outside shoulder of an offensive tackle. If he's in a 4-eye technique, he's on the inside eye of the tackle. I don't know why the eye is stipulated, but whatever. You'll also find
why. I actually do know why, Ian.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, because if you actually line up all the way out on the furthest shoulder, you're actually starting to get into almost a 3 technique of the guard. Or you're just lined purely in the gap. And what they want you to do is be on that tackle, but slightly off center. And you know the reason is the 4-eye is you're trying to jam up all those interior run lanes. But you don't want to declare so much that this tackle can just take a step out, turn his body, and screen you off because you're almost a glorified 3 technique, in the gap. So that is why they specify that, because you're going to get a piece of that tackle if he tries to fire out straight, or if he tries to fire out and get the linebacker behind you, you're going to get a piece of him and prevent that. So that's why they do it. That's why they say to line up on the eye and not the shoulder.
Great.
That's what we had the deep dive for, guys. That's how
I'm done. That was my contribution.
That's why it's to learn. It's to teach. That's what I love it. Ian, keep on.
All right. So here's a handy tip. If a guy's in a 4, 2, or 0, where they're directly across from the offensive lineman, there's a good chance they're playing a traditional 2-gapping technique. So like if you have a guy that's a straight up 0, a lot of teams play that and then he just slants. But when you have like a huge monster there, he's defending either A gap every play. If you have like a smaller, faster guy like Poona Ford, maybe it's just 1 and he's slanting or he's lagging or whatever. If they're in an I technique, they might 2-gap, but it's going to be a different technique. It's not going to be a try to drive the offensive lineman back and play both gaps. It's going to be something more like get push on the lineman so that the gap over is narrowed, but you're still in one. And then the numbers where the guy is like in a shade, like a 1, a 3, a 5, 7, 9. He's generally just, you have the gap that you're aligned in. You'll also note that it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 6, 9. And unless Paul has something else for us, no one knows why that's the case. It's just a mystery.
It sounds like the baseline to Jenny 8675309.
I missed that when Ian and
damn
Justin.
You, Tommy Two-Tone.
Oh, the 7, 6, 9. Yeah. So if there are two tight ends, the gaps would also be numbered comparably. Is that what's the confusion about that? Sorry, what am I missing?
0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 6, 9.
Oh, okay. Got it. Yeah.
It's like a why is 6 afraid of 7 kind of thing. It's just doesn't really...
7, 8, 7, 8, 9. Exactly. My 10-year-old son thinks that's an amazing joke. Hey, one thing, are we going to talk about, so those are the alignments.
Right.
Are we going to talk a little bit about the disposition of the player in that alignment? In other words, if you're one gapping, what is it you're more likely being asked to do versus a 2 gap? And then we can even get into the 1.5 stuff if we want to get crazy.
So the traditional alignments are the guy that you play in like a 0 or a 1 or a 2i or 2 is your nose. And he's like a big 2 gapper, maybe. At the very least, he's a guy that's expected to get double teamed a lot and to hold his ground.
Okay.
And then a 3 or a 4i or a 5 is a guy that's big and strong enough to play, occasional double teams or stand his ground inside against linemen. But he's much more of a get up the field, rush the passer in one-on-ones, and get in the backfield kind of player. That is the traditional understanding.
That's what I was looking for. And this is a broad generalization. You can do different things with defenses. There's hybridized forms, all sorts of stuff. But what Ian is saying, if you're actually lined up on a shade of a player, a 1, a 3, a 5, you're actually one gapping most of the time, and you're being asked to get up the field and penetrate. Okay? You're attacking a gap.
Yeah.
When you're lined head up on a guy, you're attacking the man.
Yeah.
You are driving that human being into the backfield. But by the way, if that guy gives a lot of ground and kind of invites you into the backfield, warning, danger. You need to put on the brakes and find the ball because they're trying to do something to you. At the same time, you don't want to be so mechanistic about the call that you're not a football player anymore. If you're told to penetrate up the field like a wild bandit and sprint that gap, but the ball's going away from you, don't keep running upfield like a dummy. Get flat and pursue the ball and chase the ball. So, the thing about this is these are basically you're declaring intentions. You're telling the player what I want you to do. And if you don't do this, you're going to betray what the other guys are doing in this front and in the defense and on the second level. But at the same time, be a football player. Like, if you're supposed to sprint through a gap and they immediately are double teaming you, hey, they're running at you. Something's coming. Hunker down. But if you can split their double team, hey, you might get a TFL and it's 2nd and 14. So anyway, that's just what I was going for, Ian, that the interesting thing about this is your alignment will generally tell both the offensive player and you, of course, what it is you're going to do on that play, at least initially. And like someone who's 2 gapping, you're not allowed to just sprint up the field unless you do it through the man across from you. In which case, if you can do that, let's go, baby. We got T'Vondre Sweat and Byron Murphy in there. But most mortals cannot sprint through a 320-pound guard and take him with them and then drive him in the backfield. So anyway, I just wanted to make that point. I hope that was helpful in discerning some of the finer points of this.
It is, except insofar as PK is going to break some of those a little bit.
Yes, because he hybridizes some of this. So let's talk about the
So
dribbling and the basics before we get to the next level. So
Joe, bring that up one more time. All right. The two most common techniques that PK uses for his defensive tackles are a 3 and a 2-eye. So a 3 on one side and a 2-eye on the other. He does other things too, but those are the most common fronts that he uses, especially in the 2-4-5 nickel that they spend 70% of their time in, right? Okay. Let's get the next one. It could be either of the two I sent you, Joe. All right. In this next diagram, we got, okay, when they had big old Tavondre Sweat on the field, he would play usually a 3 technique, but he would play gap and a half. I drew it as like a 2 gap because it's really hard to draw a gap and a half on a diagram.
You did well.
Gap and a half means he's a 3 technique. The first thing he's going to do is engage the guard and make sure that he's in the B gap where he's aligned across from. But he does not trying to get upfield. He's looking to occupy that space so that if the running back tries to run downhill through the B gap, he's going to see Tavondre Sweat and he's going to say, no, somewhere else. After the running back makes a cut, Sweat is then, unless the ball goes outside, he's then going to try to work back over into the A gap. So he stays engaged with his blocker and he tries to get over a gap after he's already taken away the B. When it was Byron Murphy or Moro Jomo, or, we'll see what they do this year, Alfred Collins, Dre Bledsoe, someone like that. Vernon Broughton played this technique sometimes. They'd play in a 2-eye, but they would play just the A gap. And they would be a little more free to just get upfield. All right, next one, Joe. All right, yeah. When they had big Keandre Coburn, they did not use him as a 3 technique.
No.
I think the reason for that is that on a passing play, Tavondre Sweat in a 3 technique is a good thing because he had really good hands. He could beat a guard one-on-one. He could get after the passer. Keandre Coburn, a little less so. But he was big and strong enough to 2-gap. So when he would play in a 2-eye, they would let him 2-gap. And he would play the same thing. He'd fill the A gap, take away the downhill angle, but then work over to the B gap after the back got going laterally. And then they'd have Broughton, Jomo, Collins, somebody else could be a little more free to attack in the B gap on the other side.
So Ian, can I interject something here?
Yeah.
So when we say work over to the other gap, he is securing his initial gap that he's being told to secure. That's why it is not 2-gapping in a classical sense. But he still has responsibility for a gap across from him, across from the player. And there's 2 ways he can get over. He can physically work across that guy, across his face, or he can literally grab the guy and drive him physically into the gap and hold him there while he keeps this arm free, his outside arm, free-ish, right? And this arm is locked on the guy. And so if you guys will recall, there are many 3rd and short or 4th and shorts. And I always used to laugh when people would run right up the middle on 3rd and short or 4th and short on Texas last year, where Tavondre Sweat or Murphy would secure one inside gap, physically grab the guard and manhandle him into the freaking gap. So the running back would run straight into the offensive lineman's butt and fall over or get cleaned up by Jalen Ford, who's unblocked. And then you'd see like the opposing fans or even the announcers sometimes being like, oh, that running back has to have better vision there. No, that happened real fast. And what he saw was going to be a gap and where he was told to run. Tavondre Sweat put the human being across from him in that gap and held him there and said, you stay here, good boy. And then if the back tried to bounce it, then Tavondre would swallow him up. So that's what differentiates it. But that's why I would argue that gap and a half, as we teach it, is closer to 2-gap than 1-gap. Because 1-gap, 1.5 gapping in some defenses on the NFL level, you actually are encouraged to penetrate, but with the awareness that as you start to read the play flow, you either have to put on the brakes and still protect and drive a guy into a gap, or basically what they're saying is, the rule in football for a great player, and Aaron Donald at LT, is if you can do it, do it. Meaning if you see something and you can make a play, go do it, but you're not still freed from the fact that this is your responsibility. You have a primary responsibility to this gap and a secondary responsibility to making sure this gap is at least small or sealed. It can't be a big hole. You can't just olay somebody, right? So gap and a half implies you can't swim move the guard and turn sideways and try to sprint up the field. No. But you could still penetrate by grabbing that outside shoulder of the guard and kind of jacking them up a little bit.
So before we get to, we have a good question already lined up about other spots. But before we move away from defensive tackles, one of the things I wanted to show here was that there is some flexibility in how PK plays their defensive tackles. So like a guy like Bill Norton was a two-gapper at Arizona, but he played as a nose generally. That's not a problem. That's probably a good fit for Texas because they could play Norton as a 2-eye and let him two-gap, and then use the guy as a 3 technique that maybe you don't want two-gapping. Like
was Norton lining up as a 0 heads up on the center?
Usually.
Yeah.
So there'll be an adjustment for him, but if you figure, hey, he's a good nose, but we don't want him rushing the passer, which is what they're going to decide, I can tell you right now. They can just still play Norton as a nose and then not have to use the 3 technique that plays with him like they used Sweat. So for a Broughton or a Collins or a Bledsoe, that's a really good fit. Then if they have a guy that's a really good nose, but is not going to be a good 2-gapper, maybe they take the best 2-gapping 3 technique they have and they play him with that guy.
Hey, so Joe, Justin, Ian, I want to talk about a guy who's got a good nose for mortgages.
All right.
How's that for a transition? One of the most important financial decisions you'll ever make in your life is buying a home. It is the most significant financial decision the vast majority of us will ever make. Unless you're one of those, you got those sweet NVIDIA founding stock shares and you're debating about when you want to sell that. Hey, more power to you, man. But for the most of us mortals, buying a house is the biggest single thing we'll ever do. You need the right guy guiding you through this. You need a guy with 20 years in the industry. You need a guy who's a former National Merit Scholar. You need a guy who's a diehard Longhorn, just like all of us maniacs. And you want a guy who's really conversant and goes the extra mile for his customers. That's Gabe Winslow. You can reach him at 832-557-1095. Hey, summer's here. It's time to move. Interest rates can be tough and rough out there. You need the best possible guy on your side. And you need a guy who can go shop your deal to 70 different lenders. When you go to Big Bank USA, Chase, Wells Fargo, any of those, they shop you to exactly one lender. Is that one lender highly incentivized to give you the best deal? Or would you prefer to have 70 people bidding against each other? Justin Wells, you tell me. You're a crack businessman.
Hey, the numbers don't lie. Gabe Winslow brings it.
He brings it. And the numbers you need to dial, they're right there on the screen. 832-557-1095. Call Gabe. Tell him that we sent you. Tell him Ian Boyd sent you. And he'll snap too, because he understands what failing Ian means. There's a real cost.
Gentlemen, Marcus Simeon's more athletic family member, Damon, had a really good question, and this is outstanding, and I think this is a good teaching point for all our viewers. What's the difference between the buck and the jack positions? Does one play the run and other play the pass rush? Ian, zone read, go.
Oh, Joe, Johnny on the spot again. The buck plays on the short side of the field. As you can see here, when the ball is lined up on the hash, which it is 80% of the time in college football, then you have the wide space to the other hash, and then you have the short space from the hash you're on to the sideline. The buck plays in the tighter space, and the jack plays to the wider space. Because of that, the jack is one of his number one priorities is set a really good edge and do not let runs get out into wide open space.
Yes.
The buck, so the jack ends up being more of a run stopper than the buck. The buck is where pretty much everyone in college football puts their more hybrid edge guy, who's the weak side pass rusher. So he's the guy that's going to be more of your occasionally drops into coverage, blitzes the edge, stunts in from different angles, more of a true linebacker.
So
Ian, the Jack
if I had a guy, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The Jack does some of that too, but so PK likes to have both guys be like hybrid edges, but the Jack is going to be more of a true defensive end, and the buck is going to be more of a linebacker type.
Yeah, so if it helps you, if I have two edges and one weighs 265 and he's very physical, and the other guy is 240 and he's cat quick, which one's the buck and which one's probably going to be the Jack?
Right. The answer is that the bigger guy is going to be the Jack.
Yes. And the quicker guy is going to be your buck. So the way a lot of people say is that's the rush, that's the pass rush end. But they'll often say rush end, right? Which makes people think of rushing. And then people are like, well, I thought that was the bigger guy. And so the guy who's going to go sack the quarterback in the PK defense, broadly speaking, is the buck. The guy who's going to set a great edge and then go get after the quarterback is the Jack.
So Baron Sorrell has been the Jack.
Right.
And last year, Ethan Burke was the buck. Yep. Ethan Burke is a big guy. He keeps getting bigger as he fills into his frame and has quit lacrosse. So he might play Jack in the future. And then you got Colin Simmons is your built in a lab buck. Colton Vosick may do either. Right now, he's more of a buck. Trey Moore, 235, 240 pounds from UTSA, buck.
Ian, would you say just a little bit more on this, because this is a great question. Would you say the Jack is the old school, traditional, strong side defensive end that's essentially just standing up now, backing up? Because I envision Greg Ellis, the old North Carolina defensive end, basketball player, first-round pick of the Cowboys. He was like the quintessential strong side defensive end. Would that Jack be that guy 10, 15 years ago?
Not exactly, because it's a little more hybridized.
Okay.
It's almost more like, I mean, sometimes like Michigan played some guys there at times that were like 280 pounds. So in that case, like, yes. Right. But, not exactly. Cause I mean, they want to stay light and flexible enough to be able to play coverage like a linebacker from time to time. Ideally, Texas doesn't do a ton of that, but ideally that's how it would work. Well, so I'm trying to think of a. Go ahead, Paul.
Well, I was just going to say, so in the old days, sometimes if you had really good defensive tackles and a lot of depth, and we did this last year with Alfred Collins, you go play him out on the edge some, right? But you're doing that in a very specific defense. There was a guy named Cedric Woodard who was a very good defensive tackle for Texas, but he wasn't
the only draft pick in the 1999 draft of the Longhorns.
He wasn't going to beat out He wasn't going to beat out Hampton and Rogers anytime soon. So they put him on the edge. They put him at defensive end. And running against Texas back then was a car wreck. But the new running style of a lot more outside zone, sometimes if you just have that really big, physical, strong, traditional strong side defensive end, the classic guy, he can get outrun to the corner. Yeah. So sometimes you've got to have this longer, a little more quick, a little more athletic Jack. He's still a big, strong dude. He's jacking guys up. It's like in his name, right? But he needs to have enough feet and technique and quickness that he could still get out there and not just let someone run around him.
I can buy that. I like that. Hey, keep the questions coming. We sure do appreciate you joining us today on the Deep Dive during this live stream. This is when we nerd out. When Ian Boyd starts nerding out, hey, ears pop up. Everyone's paying attention. What else do you got for us, Ian? Or do we want to just try to jump into shift into the Tom Brady roast?
Let's give an overview of the best fit for some of the defensive tackles Texas has.
Oh, I do want to hit. We had one question up here earlier from Derek M. He was on this thing early. He said, "Who committed?" Buddy, just go to InsideTexas.com and refresh because I think there's some good stuff coming down the pipe. Ian, go ahead.
So
Hey,
Bill,
if you make that a super chat, I'll tell you, but it's got to be like $50.
Paul,
And it needs to go to me personally. I'll actually give you my Venmo.
I was about to say, can we put our PayPal in this? How do I put my PayPal on this thing? Anyways, go ahead, Boyd.
he's just selling information here. All right.
Kind of what we do.
Now we're selling it by encouraging you to subscribe. What's our promo again? What's the
It's
promo?
IT1. If you put in IT1, you get Inside Texas 2 months for $1, which means you get to read Paul's excellent analysis of life. You get to hear read Ian's X's and O's to the max. You get some recruiting stuff from me, Charlie Williams, and Eric Naleen. And then you get it into June official visit season, where recruiting is really going to heat up. So come see us. IT1 gets you 2 months of Inside Texas for $1.
Yeah, if y'all are not picking up what these guys are hinting at, there's going to be reason for you to want to be on there. So
big
this coming weekend. All right. So Bill Norton, we talked about. I think his best fit is a 2-gapping nose. That's what he's done. Broughton has been a guy that you want to pair with a 2-gapper, ideally at 3 technique, because they get doubled less often than the nose tackles. And Broughton has gotten better when he's doubled, but he's never been good at it. I would say Dre Bledsoe right now is actually about where Broughton was last year, where he's not really good against double teams yet. If he has a high motor and he's very athletic, and when he's one-on-one, he'll make flash plays now and again. He can make like tackles for loss, get after the quarterback. But if he's not going to stand up to a lot of double teams, and he would have to be paired with somebody bigger. Broughton, we just covered. We didn't get to see him in the spring game to see if he's gotten any better at playing double teams. I think we're all a little suspicious that maybe he's not. Collins could theoretically and occasionally do anything you'd want him to do, but he's inconsistent. He's much better when he gets to play one-on-one with a lineman. He's really been at his best when he gets to play 3-4 defensive end, which he'll probably get to do some this year. Ideally, he could play some 2-eye or 2-gap as a 3 technique. I don't know if either are really in the cards. Paul, please interject here. What do you think?
So I'm going to offer 2 statements, and you tell me if you want to contradict any of them or refine them. Alfred Collins used to be at his best as a 1-gapper.
Yeah.
Alfred Collins is now, I think, the only defensive tackle on the roster currently who might be able to do 1 or 2 gap and basically do anything that you assign him to. But we're going to have to see. We've got to see it in live fire. I saw a couple of things in the scrimmage that suggest he's gotten a little bit better anchoring at the point of attack or playing through a guy, not just around a guy. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so if y'all want to go look for the play where he got a pick 6, the reason he got a pick 6 against Quinn Ewers was that he was in a 2-eye. He ran through DJ Campbell, which is
not easy.
Running through DJ Campbell is not something that happens very often. Pushed DJ Campbell so far in the backfield that a tight end who was coming across to block the end ran into DJ Campbell, was unable to block Ethan Burke, who then got his hands up and swatted Ewers' pass, which was then picked off by Collins. Was like, shucks, DJ Campbell looks up, oh, football, catches it, interception. Yeah, I think probably playing the Tavondre Sweat role is where Collins would fit best. And it would look a little different because he's not 270 pounds, I don't think. Didn't look quite that big, although he's gotten pretty big.
He's but he's not Tavondre big.
And then if he could do that, that would allow them to play him with like an Aaron Bryant or somebody else. So yeah, he's in a 2-eye here it's Ethan Burke on top and then Alfred Collins. DJ Campbell tries to block down on him and gets shucked. So there's 95 in the backfield pushing. And then, yeah, Burke blocks it. Hey
Burke
there.
and Collins, that could be a tandem we don't talk about enough.
Well,
You know, it
little
could be a
refined,
yin and a yang kind of deal.
They're both
absolutely.
tall.
Little refined point on that. I want those two guys on the right, play side when the quarterback's dropping back to throw, because a right-handed quarterback is releasing. Those guys have length.
Get in that lane.
Burke and Collins together. Collins is every bit of 6'5" plus, long arms. Burke is a freaking condor. I love that, and that's a very underestimated aspect of football. If your D-line can't penetrate, your big long arms don't really matter. The quarterback can still get the angle on you, or you can find a window. But if you get some penetrations and then get your arms up and don't jump, run forward, don't jump. You're tall enough to block that ball without jumping. The key is to get the depth, the penetration, so that your long arms come into play. And I love the fact that they're pairing those guys side by side, because when Quinn Ewers, he's a typically sized college football quarterback, when he dropped back, all he saw was arms. And people in the scrimmage were like, "Oh, Ewers, that's a mistake." It's like Ewers didn't do anything wrong. There was a sea of arms, and the guys didn't get blocked, and he tried to get rid of the ball. There was no window. So anyway, I love that PK is lining those two guys up side by side.
I don't know if they're going to do that on purpose or not, but it should, at the very least, it should happen.
It happens, and I like it.
Often. Yeah. Who else we got? So Bledsoe.
How about Aaron Bryant, Ian?
Bryant. Good one. I think Aaron Bryant, I don't know if he can two gap or not. I think maybe he could. But I do think he could do what Byron Murphy did, which is play one gap in the nose, be pretty disruptive, and not get washed out by double teams.
What about Tia Savea?
Tia Savea, not a two-gapper. Probably best as a three-down defensive end, I think. Really? I thought he was – what did you think of him in the spring? I thought he was solid, but he's just not very powerful, actually.
So he is not the stereotype of the Polynesian defensive tackle.
No.
He is mobile. He's quick. He's active, but he's not so quick and twitchy that he can just sprint into the backfield. That doesn't happen either. What he's good at is lateral movement and moving around and fitting to different stunts and replacement fronts where you show one thing and a guy slides over and ends up somewhere else. And what it does is it paralyzes particularly college offensive lines who are like, on the whiteboard, that guy's supposed to be there. And now he's here and I don't know what to do. And, now if you play those games, play stupid games, you do win stupid prizes. And if you do that too often and you get predictable with it, Alex Grinch, you end up getting fired and you end up giving up 400 yards rushing on national television. So that is something that I don't think he fits what PK's trying to do traditionally with a two-gapper or a one-gapper easily.
Yeah.
But I do think he's a body, and I do think he tries, and I do think that if we do some stunning and some replacement front stuff, I think he's useful.
They did do some of that, although not very much when Savea was on the field, ironically enough. And then Sydir Mitchell.
Yeah, Ian, I got Sydir Mitchell to me is the one I think a lot. That's a good question from Jay because the lights got to turn on for this guy. He has the most size, the most upside, and we just haven't seen it start to click yet. We didn't see it this spring. Ian, dive into Sydir Mitchell. What are you seeing there?
So he's Sweat 2.0. Sweat could play three or nose.
Meaner, but yeah.
Sweat could play three or nose. Sweat, though, could rush the passer. Sydir is Sweat against the run for the most part.
Okay.
He is very hard to move, as you would think, for someone that is 6'6", 370.
Just asking.
Now, Cameron Williams got the best of him on one goal line play. Cameron Williams is also huge, and he pancaked Mitchell on a goal line play. But that was most of the time you would see like bodies crash into him and then just nothing, just a pile of bodies. So right now he would be best as a nose because he doesn't move forward. He doesn't move backwards. He's just the blob, just fixed right there. Eventually, ideally, he would actually cut weight and be able to rush the passer and be able to play more as a 3. Right now, not so much.
So in that spring game, I think it's instructive. If you watch the Deer's early snaps, he's a problem.
Until he gets tired.
The reason he got pancaked, fatigue makes cowards of us all.
Amen.
Once you lose your wind, whether you're playing football or you're boxing or God help you, you're wrestling, it's like being in a nightmare when you're wrestling and you realize you're fatigued out and the guy across from you is still frisky. It's not going to go well for you. And that's what's happening to Sadir. Sadir Mitchell is a future NFL player if he wants to be. I'll just say it. And he has special traits. If he gets in shape, and I mean playing shape, I don't mean he's going to be a swimsuit model shape, but if he gets in shape, he can change his life and the life of his family. If he doesn't, he's not playable, because the minute I see him go on the field, guys, and I'm an offensive coordinator who's done some scouting, we're going, hurry up.
Yeah.
Okay. He's not coming off the field. And Texas is going to have a big dude who's exhausted that's actually now getting inside zone run at him, much less getting run around, because he can't even defend himself. He's too tired. And so here's the great promising thing about being 370. It doesn't take much to shed 20, 30 pounds. It's like a normal person shedding 8 or 10. It's not a big deal. The bad thing about being 370 is you're so out of shape that first couple of weeks really sucks. And you have to have the mental strength to work through it and suffer seeing a goal on the other end. So that's my little severe pep talk analysis.
You're also sharing the table with like a bunch of linemen that are trying to eat as much as they can, so they're big enough to push you. And then for you, it's got to be like, actually, I got to work a calorie deficit. So
yeah, he can't sit next to Jere Bledsoe. Like, they're on different plans, different tracks. He needs to go eat with the DBs who like pick at a couple of things and like peck at some nuts and salads like a bird, because they want to keep their 12 pack.
AJ's got a good question here, and it's really easy to answer. What's the deal with rotating D-line guys so much? Is it they get fat and winded? Serious question. Honestly, and you guys will nail this too, but they rotate them to keep them fresh. And it's not necessarily that they're fat or they get winded, but they do get fatigued. When you see, when you see sacks increase along the D-line, late October, November, early December, when the weather gets colder, that's why you see those guys on the field longer. That's one of the best things I think PK and those guys did in the defense the last 2 years. Devondre Sweat and Byron Murphy rarely went over 30 snaps in a game. If you've got depth to bring guys in and rotate, that makes you even stronger, especially in the fourth quarter when Murphy and Sweat are really needed to shut it down, to close it down, and they're only at 20, 25 snaps. So they're going to be able to give you a nice push on a couple more drives. I think that's the easy answer to that question. Do y'all want to add anything?
Yeah, it's a great question. So remember that the closer you are to the football, the more football is a pure anaerobic sport. Meaning they do need to build a little bit of cardio, certainly, but they don't need to be running like 2 miles or anything like that. No. That's not helpful for what they're doing. They're short burst, strength, power athletes. And the thing that tires them out is not just chasing the ball, which can be tiring. It's a 330-pound dude across from them that they're supposed to grab and physically manhandle. That is draining to a human being. That is very hard. And that's why the hardest sports in terms of just mental stress and toughness, like mental toughness and also physical wind and anaerobic capacity, are things where you combine both cardio and a physical, like you're moving another human being. Wrestling, boxing. As I said, if you get fatigued on those sports, it's a nightmare. You're literally helpless. Football's not as exaggerated, but it's similar. So a distance runner, and I know the runners out there will be mad, but I've had crazy phases in my life where I ran. I don't know why. God help me. But
because that's what we're born to do.
It is true, but it's not. You will never experience a level of exhaustion distance running the way you do doing like a really hard MMA fight. But
that 3 or 4 minutes of you're right.
I've seen a marathoner run a freaking 2 hour and 6 minute marathon, and he walks over to the microphone and gives an interview, and he says, "I ran my race." Blah, blah, blah. You know, I mean, like it's amazing. Those guys are extraordinary. You can't do that immediately after a really hard MMA round. It don't work. So that's kind of why you got to rotate these guys. They are big, big boys. Now, if they weighed 250, they'd have a lot more capacity. But if they weigh 250, they're going to lose those car crashes at the line of scrimmage. So that's why players keep getting bigger. But when they're getting bigger, they're losing some of that anaerobic threshold, and you've got to get them rotated out so they stay fresh. Because a fresh, really talented defensive tackle is a nightmare.
Yeah.
Premium.
A really good example of this is the Planet Earth in Yellowstone that they did. There's a scene where this wolf chases like a baby gazelle or something across a plain. And the wolf is smaller and built for distance running more. And the gazelle is built for like a sprint to get away initially.
There are no gazelles in Yellowstone, Ian, but
whatever it is, I don't know. It's a deer or something, whatever.
Okay.
They're built to sprint and then let the slow, weak one get eaten.
Yep.
Right. But this one gets singled out by the wolf, and it just runs and runs. And my roommates were watching it in college, so I like tuned in. I was like, oh, I want to see how this ends. And it was the most sad and depressing ending I've ever seen. Because what happened was the deer exhausted itself, and then it just stopped and laid down and let the wolf eat it alive.
Yep.
But that's
there's no children watching our lunchtime deep dive today, because that could be a little traumatizing, Ian. And you got 4 kids, so I can't imagine what dinner times like with you guys.
But that is a great example, Ian. That's why in Africa the most successful hunters are wild dogs, because they're pack animals. They cooperate, but also they can run freaking 35 miles per hour when they need to sprint, and they can literally run 40 miles in a day at 4.5 minute mile clips, and they never stop. So, you know, in a weird way, you'd rather have a lion chasing you if you can get some distance on it than a pack of wild dogs. So, yeah, it's crazy.
So
animal metaphors can we work in?
Deer on the goal line is the exhausted baby deer.
Yes.
And he's no longer the hippo or whatever. He's now the baby deer. Just eat me. I'm done. I can't do it anymore.
Hey, can I give y'all a quick animal strength story?
Always.
Okay. So
does it involve orangutan?
No, but I've told you that one before. Pumpkin the orangutan. I was in Africa. I was in Zimbabwe. I went to the Chipangali Wildlife Orphanage. And they take rescued animals that, the parents were killed by poachers or were injured or whatever, and they raise them. And they sell tickets and bring in tourists to help pay for their food and whatever. So, I did crazy stuff there. I played with lion cubs semi-adult lions for 3 hours. They had a leopard named Razor, who was a tame female leopard that just wandered around with her black lab best friend, and you could pet her. But they had a rhino who they'd adopted as a baby. It's full grown now, and he was very tame, very tractable. And the guy saw how much I liked animals. He said, let's do something. Grab the rhino's horn, stand in front of it, grab its horn. And I'm going to stand over here and rattle the feed sack. And he's like, get a good base and grab the horn. And whatever you do, hold on. And I was like, okay, is it going to run over me? He's like, no, he's gentle. So he rustles the feed sack over on its peripheral vision, and the rhino just turned its head to look just like that. And I flew 25 feet and landed on my ass.
A small guy.
And everyone there burst out laughing, and I was dying laughing. And I was like, you try it. You try to hold that rhino in place. That is what Sadir Mitchell can be if he gets in a little better shape. He's that rhino that he just does a casual movement and a guard goes flying. So that's what we're hoping for Sadir. So, hey, Sadir, pep talk and also an analysis there. But you got a chance to change your life in the next 4 months and be a key to this football team.
I love that. That's what I'm going to say. Sadir needs to be the rhino That's going to be the 2024 calling for Sadir Mitchell.
The same thing, Paul. The same thing happened to me in high school. We played tackle football in the mud with our youth group, and our youth pastor was like a 240-pound, fit, powerful dude, and I was like 115 or something, sophomore or something. And I tried to tackle him, and I grabbed one of his arms, and he turned like this, and I flew and hit wet grass and slid about 25 yards. And it's like the closest I've gotten to knowing what it would actually be like to be on the field with these people that we talk about and occasionally joke about on these shows.
I love that our friends over at Irish Sports Daily are tuned in today and they're watching, and they make a really good point. So basically, we're talking about wolves. We're talking about we went Animal Planet, which I'm always for. Hey, so basically, what are y'all saying? Texas will be the wolf on November 30th. Do you guys know what happens on November 30th?
A&M.
Texas better be the wolf. They better come in ready to eat, because that game, Kyle Field, it's going to be absolutely nuts, man. I cannot wait for that game. And we do appreciate the guys over at Irish Sports Daily checking in on us. Amazing people. Go over there and see those guys. They're top to bottom, one of the best in the business. So give Christian McCollum and Matt Freeman and those guys a lot of love. Any parting shots before we take off from this lunchtime deep dive?
I hope when we go to College Station, it's wolves, plural, not a wolf, because
pack.
The strength of the pack is the wolf, and the strength of the wolf is the pack.
Hey, they're gonna do it wolf pack style, like The Hangover. They're gonna make a wolf pack. Ian, thank you for your diagrams. Anything else you want to add?
Forever Cedar Park High. That was our motto. Strength of the wolf is the pack, and the strength of the pack is the wolf. Cedar Park Timberwolves.
Oh, goodness gracious. This is always a blast. This is always fun. Please come see us at InsideTexas.com. This is what it's like on the message board. We have the best community. We really do have a good time. Use promo code IT1, and that'll get you 2 months of InsideTexas.com for only $1. That'll get you into May. We are on the road. It's the spring evaluation period. Texas coaches are out. We're out. We've got lots of updates. Come check it out. And then June official season starts next month, and that's when it gets crazy in this class of 2025. Come with us to watch it all play out. Like and subscribe the video on the Inside Texas YouTube channel. Help us to keep climbing. We want to get to that 8,000 mark, and we are so thankful for you guys in the community doing that. Thank you again, fans, for listening and making us a part of your day. And come see us at InsideTexas.com again. Also, last thing, deep dive Thursdays. This is scheduled. Watch every Thursday morning. You need to be paying attention. This is one of the best shows on the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel. So be sure and always tune in. For Paul, for Ian, I'm Justin, and thank you for joining us on the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel, powered by InsideTexas.com.